Hi, this is Sofia, the Echo World Magical Extra. Last week it was my time to record, but I didn't. But as my dear friend, my son Maria Kindgren says, if you make the rules, you're also allowed to break them. So I went for that. Speaking of Majjsan, she has just relaunched her beautiful company where she's making jewelry of all kinds and much more than that. We call it Deep Forest Creations or Deep Forest Design. So check out her new company, which is called Yoara. That's Yoara. Yoara. Search for that on Etsy, on Facebook, and you will find it, or search on her name, Maria Kindgren. Speaking of friends, I have another thing that I would like to announce. That is dear friend and very, very talented medium and healer, Angelica Blackmoon, will have a new webinar series coming up at the end of March. On the 27th of March, she has a freebie. Wherever you are in the world, you can join and see what she has to say to you and what she has to teach you about mediumship and what happens on the other side. I know how good she is because she helped me out a lot over the years. Me, my small contribution is neither doing jewelry or creating beautiful stuff or channeling, but I do write stories every once in a while, and I have the privilege of being able to publish some of these in the Echo World, and I have done so lately under our section Ghosts, Mysteries, Oddities and Miracles in the South. And I would like to read you my latest one, which is called Jamestown Is Hunting Us. Here we go. Curiously, it was Michael who brought in a clear ghost story in spite of my resolve to listen, in spite of my acceptance of my need for stories from behind the veil. We had taken a day trip to Jamestown, Virginia. A rare day of pure touristy time, talking non-stop as Michael drove, enjoying the landscape, enduring the colonial heroism movie at the Jamestown Museum, joking about the language used when walking the grounds that was once one of the first settlements of people from the old world who were willingly or unwillingly going to be part of creating the new world. Back home, we drank some wine and mused over history and cultural languages. Michael was recovering from his Rocky Mountain symptoms, and even though I held my breath over his energy level, I didn't want the evening to end. Which was when Mrs. Brown made her appearance. Unexpected and not entirely longed for, regardless of what I might have said to my patron ghost saint Frida Kahlo about bringing them on. But then again, are ghosts ever welcome? Mrs. Brown. Mr. and Mrs. Brown were a respectable couple. They lived in the east corner of Jamestown, in a brick house built in the honorable style of Mother England. When Mrs. Brown attended church every Sunday, she was pleased to know that her prayers were heartfelt and pure. Not as the merchants who bent their heads and accepted the body of Christ with their thoughts elsewhere, as what profit they could make, or even more profane. Mrs. Brown bent her head knowing that the Lord would protect her. She saw him clearly with his fiery sword and shining robes. Not that she had any delusions of being a mystic. She simply knew that the Lord held her in his arms, saving her always from the devil's spawns running in the forest, and the devil ravishing the hearts even of her fellow men. She knew that God was with her. She had heard rumors of relationships with the savages going sour, that more boys and men had to be recruited to protect the town. But she had faith. They had God on their side. What could wild men do to them? She had heard other rumors, more disturbing and difficult to understand, that there were British men who had become intimate with the Indians, who chose to stay with them and talked about them in admiring ways. But surely such rumors were mere speculations, aiming for a moment of gossiping awe. Mr. Brown was indeed a merchant, but he was a God-fearing good man. When he said grace at the dinner table, 2 sons and 2 daughters, old enough to sit with them at the table at each long side, Mrs. Brown felt proud that they had chosen to take civilization to these God-forsaken lands. A low-key kind of proud. She was safe. Her baking skills was a pride for her family, and her daughters learned quickly. Mrs. Brown berry pies created deep sighs at the women's meeting when she hosted for embroidery afternoons. It was one of these berry pies she brought with her when she took her daughters to Martin's Hundreds, where her husband's cousin lived. This cousin was quite well off, married to one of the bigger landowners, and she had 3 beautiful girls of her own. Mrs. Brown wanted to stay on good foot, and as well as bring her daughters closer to social advancement. She was quite thrilled over the whole thing and shooed her daughters in front of her to get on the small boat arranged to take them down by the river. It was the 22nd of March, 1622. Me and Michael knew nothing of this when we first encountered Mrs. Brown. We kept talking about 17th century colonial times. I had become quite fixated by this historic period, wanting to use it in my writing, especially regarding Jamestown. The kitchen was cold, and 2 feet of snow outside gave that certain kind of light that makes you feel like you live in an isolated pocket. The rest of the world may or may not still be in existence. We lit more candles and talked about going down to feed the fire when Michael suddenly went very pale. Such sadness is almost unbearable. I feel such sadness, he stammered. Obviously so affected, it was hard for him to sit up straight. It's a woman. Her pain is fathomless, and the sadness. It took me several seconds to understand what had happened. We had brought something back with us, someone who was in great pain and now hung on to Michael with all she was worth, choking him with the depth of her emotions. A candle, a place on the altar, something she can hold on to, Michael said. I jumped up, grabbed one of the white votive candles, placed it on a mirror and lit it. Maybe something more, I murmured, not sure of what I was doing. Yes, replied Michael, something more, quickly, she's fading. I ran to the cupboard where I kept aromatic oils and got out a bottle of cedar oil, ran back and poured a couple of drops in the candle. The smoke rose and the scent spread across the room. Here, I called with a soft voice, as if the woman was a stray cat I wanted to feed. Here is a place for you to hold on to. Can you see the light? Can you hear the scent? In an instant, I knew she left Michael and took her home in the candle. Michael was still shaken, but his voice was fully his own when he said, "Her name is Sarah, Sarah Brown. I see her crawling on her hands and knees in the mud. She lost everything. There is so much confusion. Her daughters, it's too much. I don't know if she is strong enough to stay here." I wanted her to stay. Most of all, I did not want her to settle in some unconscious part of Michael's mind. So I kept the light burning, fed it with cedar oil several times a day, and even made her a paper rose colored with coffee and red ink. Her presence was subtle. Fear and weakness made her flicker with the rhythm of the candle. It took 2 days until I heard a real sentence from her. "I'm afraid of the devil," she said. "We have no protection from the devil." I laughed and assured her that the devil didn't exist. When I saw the flame of the candle shrink, I realized my mistake. "There are no devils in here," I corrected with a loud voice, trying to induce her with confidence I myself did not feel. "Me and Michael have created good protection against the devil. There are guardians at every corner of the house." I had no clue if I used appropriate terminology, but the flame stabilized and shone as before. The following days, I kept the light burning. I looked up name lists for the colony of Jamestown. Sarah, it turned out, was one of the most common women names. Brown, one of the most common surnames. I found no Sarah Brown, but the lists were not complete. I did, however, find the so-called Indian massacre on the 22nd of March, 1622. Martin's 100 captured my attention, the settlement leveled to the ground. Many women were captured. I thought of Sarah's daughters and shuddered. Some weeks later, me and Michael had to dismantle the main altar to make room for a guest bed sofa. I took the paper rolls and put it on a side table. I could not sense Sarah's presence anymore. Always so thin, it now seemed to have evaporated completely. I hoped she found her way to some less frightening existence. Then I simply forgot about her. Spring came, not with a whimper, but with a bang. Electric storms lit up the sky over the treetops, and fireflies started to dance through the night. One evening, heavy with rain and thunder, we were sitting on the porch, and she suddenly came to my mind. "I wonder what happened to Sarah," I said out of the blue. Michael shrugged his shoulders. Neither one of us could fully identify with her God-fearing, sad existence. That night, when I crawled into bed and was just about to fall asleep, a female voice said close to my ear, "You have a funny-looking soul." I have heard many things said about me, but this one was new. "Really?" I said. "What does that mean?" "Oh," the woman said, sounding almost giddy. "Nothing much. It's just a bit funny, is all. I can see souls now. I can see the souls of all kinds of creatures." It was Sarah Brown. I did not recognize her at first. She seemed happy and young. More than anything, she was excited, telling me breathlessly about the world she was exploring, how all the gods looked, how many they were, the rainbow snakes, the three-headed ones, mighty, silly, wondrous, colorful gods. And the human souls, spring green, loud yellow, the purple of iris flowers, round, oval, dog-shaped, spiraling vines shaped. I see everything on a soul level now, she said proudly. There is so much to discover. I did not ask her if she had seen the desert tribe god Jehovah or the shining soul of Christ. If she had, I was convinced they held no special significance to her anymore. But before she left, she placed an air kiss on my cheek and said, "You're wrong, you know. The devil does exist. He lives in all the people who still need him." And with a silvery laughter, she left me. Too much to explore, to spend any more precious time on a funny-looking soul like me.